At 4:57 a.m., a tow truck cuts through the pre-dawn stillness on Oakwood Lane. The driver steps out, eyes fixed on the large white vehicle parked beside a modest home. From her upstairs window, Donna Whitfield watches, coffee in hand. A thin smile crosses her lips. The winch groans. The hook latches onto the FEMA MIO-V. Its blue seal catches the faint light. In his bedroom, Patrick Reeves stirs. His phone erupts, a shrill alert he knows too well. FEMA alert. Hurricane Helena intensifying to Category 3. All assets mobilize immediately. Landfall projected 11 a.m. He skids to the driveway. The concrete pad where the command vehicle always sat is bare. Only tire tracks remain.
Impossible. I parked it last night. They couldn't have bypassed the locks on a Sunday morning.
His phone still displays the hurricane spiral. 6 hours until the storm makes landfall.
Finally, the neighborhood looks perfect again. No ugly trailer ruining my view.
The first raindrops spatter the asphalt. The nation's emergency response is now crippled by a petty HOA grudge. It hadn't started that morning. For 2 years, Patrick had been fighting a war of attrition in his own subdivision. The HOA letter ordered, cease parking unauthorized vehicles. Fine, $100 per day.
18 months of fines. She wants to bleed me dry.
At the town hall, Donna turned neighbors into a mob.
He parks a government spy truck in front of our children. It's a security risk.
Spy truck? It's a mobile emergency ops center. I am a FEMA contractor.
Your job doesn't exempt you from our rules. Tow it or we'll do it for you.
He showed them the FEMA credentials. She called them fake. In drill mode, that vehicle had routed ambulances and saved lives. Now, as a real hurricane churned toward the coast, it sat in some impound lot. Patrick hurried inside, phone already pressed to his ear. The tow company's line rang once, then, "You've reached Apex Towing. Our office is closed on Sundays. For emergencies, leave a message."
Closed. Of course. She planned this for a Sunday.
He dialed the next number. Donna answered on the second ring, her voice dripping with false surprise.
Oh, that was yours. I had no idea. It looked abandoned. I did the HOA a favor.
Donna, that's a federal disaster response asset. A hurricane is hours away, and you've crippled our entire operation.
Spare me the drama. If it was so important, you'd have parked it somewhere secure.
At the FEMA Command Center, Director Alan Hayes stared at the tracking map. A new update flashed. Helena now a Category 3. Accelerating.
Reeves' MIO-V is offline. Without it, we lose field coordination for the entire coastal sector. Find it now.
The hurricane was now less than 5 hours from landfall. The missing vehicle was already costing precious time. The MIOV's last GPS ping showed it locked behind the gate of a dusty impound lot. 30 miles inland, but a universe away. A sign wired to the chain link read, "Closed weekends. No access until Monday, 8 a.m.
Monday. The hurricane would hit tonight. They had sentenced those people to wait for help that couldn't come.
He dialed the nursing home in the flood zone. The administrator answered on the first ring, her voice thin with barely controlled panic.
This is Patrick Reeves with FEMA. I need your status. Has any federal support reached you?
The answer was a heavy silence. No help had come. The MIO-V that was supposed to coordinate their evacuation sat behind barbed wire. Outside Sunset Haven, wind rattled the palm trees. The sky darkened to a sick yellow. First raindrops hammered the windows. Staff moved residents away from the windows. They had no transport, no command link, only prayers.
Reeves, we just confirmed. The MIO-V is at Apex Impound. We can't touch it until Monday. The whole coast is blind.
The first feeder bands slashed across the coast. The countdown to catastrophe had begun. Hurricane Helena slammed ashore at midday. Patrick, now in full National Guard uniform, hunched over a makeshift radio.
Command. This is Reeves. I am flying blind, no MOV, no coordination grid. I need eyes on Sunset Haven immediately.
At Sunset Haven, water was already swallowing the parking lot. Staff barricaded doors as the storm surge crept under the frames. Inside, a nurse screamed into a dead radio. The evacuation plan had been built around that command vehicle. Now there was only silence. 30 miles inland, safe in her dry living room, Donna Whitfield opened Facebook. She typed, "Finally got rid of that ugly RV. Our HOA looks perfect again. Number, no more eyesores." She refreshed the page, watching the likes tick up, completely unaware that the hurricane had already made landfall.
They're counting on me. That nursing home. Those residents. And I am stuck here with a radio and a prayer.
At Sunset Haven, a wall of water finally breached the main ward. Alarms wailed into the screaming wind. Patrick heard the distress call through static, a garbled cry for help that ended in a wet burst of silence. By evening, the news broke nationwide. 3 residents of Sunset Haven had died in the flooding. Their rescue had been delayed by hours. The chyron read, "FEMA command vehicle missing during critical response window." Investigation launched. Donna Whitfield stood in her kitchen, a fresh cup of coffee in hand, when the broadcast played. Her face went pale.
Missing FEMA vehicle. That ugly RV. Could that really be why they died?
The mug slipped from her fingers. Ceramic exploded across the tile, coffee pooling like floodwater. She didn't move.
No. I didn't know. It was just an ugly trailer. It wasn't supposed to be important.
Her eyes darted to her phone, the Facebook post. Still live, still collecting smiles and hearts. Her fingers trembled over the screen. Delete. The post vanished, but not before the internet had already done its work.
It was a mistake. I'll just explain. It was a misunderstanding. They can't blame me for an innocent cleanup.
But the screenshots were already spreading. The nation would soon connect a petty act of aesthetic spite to a catastrophic loss of life. Within 48 hours, state investigators were on Patrick's doorstep. Director Maria Sanchez carried a tablet already loaded with the towing report.
Mr. Reeves, we've traced the command breakdown to your missing vehicle. I need to know everything.
It begins and ends with Donna Whitfield. I have 2 years of documentation. Letters, fines, threats.
He handed over a binder, thick as a phone book. Not just HOA letters, but certified FEMA registration papers and a log of every hostile town hall. That same afternoon, the HOA board convened an emergency session. Donna Whitfield sat at the head of the table, perfectly composed.
I did what any responsible chair would do. The vehicle was abandoned. No markings, no notice. You can't blame me for a hurricane.
The board members exchanged nervous glances. Liability was a grenade they couldn't afford to drop. The vote was swift. The HOA issued a formal statement backing Donna's version of events, labeling the tow a procedural action against an eyesore.
I've seen these HOA notices before, but they don't explain the 4:53 a.m. call to the tow company. Who authorized that?
Donna Whitfield. And my neighbor Clara Meeks heard her threaten it months ago. She'll talk.
Some neighbors now saw Patrick as the villain. They shouted at him from the sidewalk. They blamed him for not securing the vehicle, for trusting in rules instead of chains.
They don't understand. A tow truck doesn't care about locks.
At Sunset Haven, flowers and candles marked a makeshift memorial. 3 faces watched silently from rain-stained photographs. A young woman wept, clutching a photo of an elderly man. He had been her grandfather. A lawyer addressed the small crowd. His words carried the weight of legal force. His statement said, "We will file wrongful death suits." The HOA's actions were not a mistake. They were a choice.
They'd named me as a key witness. My evidence would be laid bare for the world.
But the guilt wasn't his. The 4:53 a.m. call was made by someone else. The civil suits landed. Donna Whitfield was listed first. Her denials were now a legal liability. The phone records were irrefutable. At 4:53 a.m., Donna Whitfield's number dialed Apex Towing. Duration 12 minutes. The tow request field read, "Abandoned RV at 14 Oakwood. No plates, no owner. Remove immediately." Patrick's binder told a different story. Photo after time-stamped photo showed the vehicle clearly marked, in active use, its FEMA inspection sticker renewed.
This was a week before the storm. I am running a full comms drill. She knew exactly what she was doing.
Buried in the stack, they found a letter from 6 months earlier. A direct threat: remove the vehicle or we will tow it by any means necessary. The signature at the bottom was crisp and deliberate. Donna Whitfield, HOA chair. Forensic analysts laid the two stories side by side. Donna's abandoned vehicle claim evaporated against the weight of her own words. The timeline they built showed a campaign of escalation, not a single honest mistake. The state investigator slid the binder closed. This was no longer a civil negligence matter. It was obstruction. Donna Whitfield's false shield had shattered. Her own board members began quietly calling their lawyers. 3 days later, in a closed Pentagon ceremony, Patrick Reeves stood in full Army service uniform as a general pinned a commendation medal to his chest. The medal read, "For sustained service to the nation's emergency readiness," but the unspoken message was clearer. The military now saw the tow as an attack on one of their own. Downtown, in a sterile federal office, Prosecutor Angela Cross slid a 3-inch binder across the table toward Donna Whitfield's attorney.
Unlike the HOA, we don't fine, we indict. Obstruction of a military emergency response is a federal crime.
Donna's composure cracked. For the first time, her voice lost its sharpness.
What if I make this right? A settlement, a generous one. Money for the families, no criminal record.
The proposal reached Patrick that evening, delivered by her lawyer as a desperate bid.
She thinks she can write a check and erase 3 lives? Tell her the only settlement I'll accept is her full confession in open court.
The lawyer left. In the morning, a grand jury subpoena was logged into the federal docket. Donna Whitfield had tried to buy her way out. Now she would face the full weight of the United States government. 1 week later, FEMA held a press conference. Alan Hayes stood before a room of silent reporters.
Without that vehicle, field coordination was crippled for over 12 hours. That delay is why rescuers could not reach Sunset Haven.
The screen behind him flashed a red gap. From dawn to dusk, the coastal sector had been blind. Maria Sanchez stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of the state's own investigation.
The nursing home sat in that gap. Every second of that delay is a second those residents were without help.
The official audit synopsis was released. The vehicle's removal was the primary contributing factor to the catastrophic response delay. Satellite imagery overlaid the flood zone with a 35-mile communication hole. That hole matched exactly where the MIOV should have been. The press conference ended. Reporters scrambled to file their stories. The narrative had shifted. No longer a petty HOA dispute. A single woman's spite had shattered the nation's emergency response at its weakest moment. Donna Whitfield was now the face of that failure, and the public wanted answers before the grand jury even convened. That same afternoon, in the master bedroom of her Oakwood home, Donna Whitfield's husband threw a final shirt into a suitcase.
You are leaving. After 22 years. Because of a parking violation?
He didn't answer. The suitcase zipper closed like a coffin. Her phone buzzed. The HOA board had released a statement. Miss Whitfield acted alone, without board knowledge or approval.
They threw me overboard, every last one of them.
By morning, her event planning business had lost every client. Contracts canceled, voicemail full of angry strangers. Then came a knock at the front door. A process server stood on the stoop, a thick envelope in hand. The top page read, United States v. Donna Whitfield. Charge obstruction of military emergency response.
Federal charges. They're treating me like a terrorist over an ugly RV.
She stood frozen in the doorway, the papers trembling in her hands. In 1 week, she had lost her husband, her board, her income, and her freedom. The grand jury convened in a windowless federal room. Patrick Reeves took the oath, his binder already open.
I told them repeatedly, in writing, in person, that the vehicle was a federally registered emergency asset. They didn't care.
He laid out the photos, the FEMA registration, the threat letter. Every piece of evidence snapped into place.
Major Reeves, did Miss Whitfield ever inform you she planned to tow the vehicle that Sunday morning?
Never. She called the tow company at 4:53 a.m., while the hurricane was already a Category 3. She did it in the dark.
The jurors were silent. The foreman signed without hesitation. The indictment read, United States v. Donna Whitfield. Count 1, obstruction of emergency management. Count 2, obstruction of military response. The next morning, 2 federal agents knocked on Donna Whitfield's door. She opened it still in her robe. They turned her around and cuffed her wrists. A neighbor's cell phone caught the moment. As the patrol car pulled away, her neighbor, Clara Meeks, finally spoke aloud what the whole street was now thinking. The trial opened in a packed federal courtroom. Donna Whitfield's defense attorney rose, aiming at the one soft target. He turned to Patrick on the stand, voice dripping with false incredulity.
Why would you park a military command vehicle in a residential neighborhood, surrounded by families? It was a designated federal asset, registered with FEMA and the state. My home was its approved staging location for rapid hurricane response.
His tone was measured, factual. The jury leaned forward, unswayed by the insinuation. Then, the prosecution introduced a new document. The courtroom stilled. The HOA's insurer had voided all coverage. The letter read, policy nullified. The tow constitutes an intentional criminal act, excluded from liability protection. Donna Whitfield was now personally exposed for millions in restitution. The defense pressed once more, but Patrick's voice didn't waver. As the gavel fell, one thing was clear. The trial was no longer about a towed RV. It was about whether a community would let her pay for the lives she'd cost. By the second week of trial, a crowd had become a fixture on the courthouse steps, not for justice, for spectacle. Anonymous accounts flooded local pages. Reeves is a military plant. He left that truck there on purpose. Thousands of shares.
I've served this country for 20 years. Now they paint me as the villain, the one who caused the deaths.
His attorney called with a fresh offer, a settlement from Donna's remaining assets, split among the families, enough to make the noise stop.
I could end this tomorrow, take the money, erase the spotlight. But would that be justice, or just a payoff?
Before deciding, he asked to meet the families. They sat in his living room, a daughter, a son, a widow. A daughter whispered that her father deserved more than a check. She wanted the truth spoken in open court. The son nodded. The widow clutched a worn photograph. All 3 looked at Patrick with the same unspoken plea.
No deal. We finish this in court. She doesn't get to write a check and bury what she did.
The smear campaign intensified, but Patrick Reeves had drawn his line. Justice would not be silenced by a checkbook. The prosecution called the tow truck driver. He shuffled to the stand, nervously adjusting his cap.
The woman who called said she was the property manager. Told me the RV was abandoned for months. No plates, no owner.
And did you verify her claim before towing a vehicle clearly marked with federal seals?
No, ma'am. I get a lot of calls on Sunday mornings. Thought it was just another abandoned eyesore.
The driver pointed toward the defense table. His fingers settled on Donna Whitfield. Next, Clara Meeks. She walked slowly to the stand, her walker scraping the floor.
I heard her say it 6 months ago on the sidewalk. I'll get rid of that thing one way or another.
The defense attorney shot up. Objection. Hearsay. The judge's gavel fell sharply, overruled. The words were a direct threat made by the defendant herself. The testimony left no doubt. Donna Whitfield had planned the tow, lied to the company, and silenced all warnings. The honest mistake defense collapsed. The prosecution wasn't done. They had saved the sharpest knife for last.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was not a one-time mistake. Donna Whitfield used her HOA position to systematically target the vulnerable.
On the screen, faces appeared. An elderly man in a wheelchair she'd fined for a ramp. A single mother she'd tried to evict over a basketball hoop.
She picked on people who couldn't fight back. Patrick Reeves was just the one who finally stood up.
Donna's face crumpled. For the first time in the trial, she wept openly, but no one on the jury looked moved. The defense rested weakly, calling no character witnesses of their own. Angela Cross rose for closing arguments. The room leaned in.
When Donna Whitfield called that tow truck, she didn't just remove a vehicle. She removed the lifeline for an entire nursing home. That was no accident. That was a choice that killed 3 people.
The prosecutor's words hung in the air. The families of the victims, seated in the front row, held hands. Now, it was up to 12 strangers to decide if a woman's vanity was worth 3 lives. The jury returned in under 4 hours. No one breathed. The foreman read the verdict. On the charge of obstruction of emergency management, guilty. Obstruction of military response, guilty. Donna Whitfield slumped in her chair, a wail tearing through the silence.
This court sentences you to 10 years in federal prison. Full restitution to the families of the deceased.
The families in the front row broke into sobs of relief, hands reaching for one another. Patrick Reeves stood motionless. He didn't smile. He simply nodded. Once, outside the courthouse, the families surrounded him, not with anger, but with gratitude. By week's end, the HOA had crumbled. A notice taped to the clubhouse door read, "Oakwood Estates HOA officially disbanded." Donna Whitfield, who once ruled her neighborhood with fines and fear, was led away in chains. Justice did not erase the loss, but it ensured no other family would suffer for a clean driveway. A week later, a quiet knock came at Patrick's door. 3 neighbors, the same who once jeered, now stood with a homemade casserole and a note. The note read, "We should have believed you. We listened to the wrong voice."
Water under the bridge. Just remember next time. Lives matter more than lawns.
By month's end, the families had channeled their grief into something lasting. A scholarship in the victims' names. At the ceremony, a young girl accepted the first award. She clutched a photo of her grandfather, one of the 3. The following week, Patrick stood in full dress uniform again. This time, it was a public ceremony. A general stepped to the podium, his voice carrying through the silent hall.
Major Reeves exemplified the highest standards of service. His integrity under pressure is a model for us all.
Patrick accepted the medal, his expression unchanged. He didn't need accolades. He needed the dead to know their loss had carved a better system. The scholarship would continue. The community, once fractured, began to mend. 1 month into her sentence, a letter arrived at Patrick's home. The return address was a federal correctional facility. He recognized the handwriting immediately, the same sharp loops that had signed 2 years of HOA fines. The letter read, "You destroyed me. If you had just moved that ugly trailer, none of this would have happened."
She still blames me. After 3 deaths, a trial, and a prison sentence, she learned nothing.
He set the letter down and reached for a blank sheet of paper.
No, Donna. You did this to yourself. The people you killed for a clean driveway are the ones you should apologize to.
He didn't write pages, just that truth, signed his name, sealed it, and walked it to the mailbox. He never visited her. He didn't need to. Donna's letter went into a drawer, tucked beneath the binder of evidence. A reminder of what pettiness cost. The chapter was closed. Patrick Reeves had walked through fire and come out without hatred. Only a quiet, unshakable peace. In the months following the trial, the federal government moved. A bill was drafted, the Protecting Emergency Assets Act. It passed the Senate and the House with overwhelming bipartisan support. No more tows, no more loopholes. On Patrick's property, a new MEOV took its place, sleek, reinforced, and guarded. A small security booth stood beside it. The law was clear. Federal emergency assets were now legally off limits to any local busybody with a tow company on speed dial.
I've seen what happens when pettiness meets unpreparedness. This law ensures no one else pays that price.
He didn't seek the spotlight, but when asked, he testified with the same steady voice that had echoed through the federal courtroom. The bill was signed into law. In the audience, the families of the 3 victims wept quietly. Grief transformed into purpose. Over time, Patrick became a quiet authority on disaster readiness, not a celebrity, but a guardian of hard-learned lessons. Other states adopted similar protections. In emergency management textbooks, Sunset Haven became a case study in what happens when a local grudge crosses federal lines. And in Oakwood, the new command vehicle hummed quietly on the concrete pad, untouchable, a symbol of what justice required. 2 years after the storm, Sunset Haven reopened, not just a facility, a promise. A memorial garden bloomed where the flood had once swallowed the parking lot. On a clear spring morning, a family knelt at the garden's edge. They placed fresh flowers beside a small plaque. The plaque bore 3 names, the same 3 names from the scholarship, from the trial, from the photographs held by widows. Patrick Reeves stood at the back, unnoticed. He had driven 3 hours just to be there for 10 minutes. He stepped forward only after the family left. Quietly, he set his FEMA pin on the memorial bench. No words, just a small token of a man who had carried their deaths with more gravity than anyone could know. Then he walked home. The streets of Oakwood were quiet, ordinary. A neighbor, mowing his lawn, cut the engine to wave. Patrick raised a hand in return. The wave was simple, but it carried the weight of reconciliation. The command vehicle sat steady on its pad. The memorial bloomed, and the memory of 3 souls ensured pettiness would never cost a life again.